Hello everyone, good day. Juxtaposition here. I'm going to do some comparisons and contrasting regarding some clandestine services soldiers, um, some of whom were recruited, some volunteered, most were sort of integrated in without their express written permission, like in the case of Charlie Manson, for example. I want to bring up Charlie Manson first. I'm going to bring up Charlie Manson, and I'm going to contrast him with William Egan Colby, who was one of the top, if not the top, most senior person of the Central Intelligence Agency in its history, William Egan Colby. I'm going to bring in a son of Japanese immigrants, Dr. Victor Ohta. He's a medical doctor, optomologist. I'm going to bring his case in. I'm going to bring in the case of Jose Enrique Menendez, who escaped the Fidel Castro regime in Havana, Cuba, to have a spectacular career in financial and entertainment in the United States of America without missing a beat. I'm going to bring up Leno LaBianca, who's been completely overlooked with the Sharon Tate, Charlie Manson cult family ritual mendacities, so that no one even knows who Leno LaBianca was. Then I'm going to throw in Art Linkletter, and then today's news is Angela Lansbury, who ties back to Charlie Manson. So let's just kick it off with how the clandestine services likes to punk you, to punk me, to continue the MK Ultra simulated reality that is not legitimate. And of course, that way the bankers can march toward their central bank digital currency social obedience participation score system, which is really what they want to do. If we're talking about Charlie Manson, or if we're talking about Jose Menendez, then we're not talking about where do the bankers live in your neighborhood, which is, to tell you the truth, that's the single most important thing that you should find out is where do all the bankers live? What's their street addresses? Just in case your bank closes and doesn't open up and you don't have your social card digital passport, then you might want to need to go talk to a banker. And they won't be at the branches, I guarantee you. When they take the economy down, they're going to be sheltering in place. So it's good to find out where those shelters are located, because we will need to conduct banker meetings, just like you would if you needed a turkey sandwich at Subway sandwiches. They'll probably be open. So if the bank's closed, then there needs to be a satellite office. All right, so it was actually yesterday's news. Angela Lansbury passed away at the age of 96. Okay, everybody has a good feeling, I think, about Murder, She Wrote. Angela Lansbury, a long, illustrious career in both United Kingdom, England, and Hollywood, USA. She also had a daughter named Deidre. Her daughter Deidre was age 16 in 1969, and Angela Lansbury had to sign a permission slip in order for her daughter Deidre, age 16, to stay overnight with the Manson family, which of course didn't exist. However, there was a dormitory of 3 houses and 2 swimming pools located in close proximity to the CBS television studios in Van Nuys on 13158 Chandler Boulevard. And Angela Lansbury signed a permission slip so that her daughter Deidre could stay overnight with Susan Atkins, Mary Bruner, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Leslie Van Houten, who I think just appeared on the scene in 1969 for the first time, whereas Mary Bruner had been in the orbit with Charlie Manson since 1967. Where she was introduced to him in Berkeley, and he was moved in with her in her apartment near the University of California, Berkeley, near College Avenue in the East Bay. Mary Bruner, where she eventually became pregnant with Charlie Manson's child. So Mary Bruner was in from the get-go. Susan Atkins came 6 months later, and Susan Atkins stuck around with Charlie for the 2.5 years that they were out of jail. But the news yesterday was how Angela Lansbury had to move from California to escape the Manson family to protect her daughter. Okay, let me just take my helmet off here that I'm on cruise control and let you know that that's a complete, total mendacity, untrue. I just finished telling you that Angela Lansbury signed a permission slip so their daughter could spend time with Susan Atkins and Mary Bruner and Patricia Krenwinkel, who two of the three were accused of murdering Sharon Tate. So there's at least a 50% chance that Angela Lansbury's daughter could have been charged with murder, right? Anyway, my point is, she wasn't taking anyone away from the Manson family. She's encouraging her daughter to go over there. Her daughter's in high school, for crying out loud. Anyway, what I'm telling you is there was no Manson family, so I'm not putting any blame on Angela Lansbury. I'm sure she was told it's just another reality TV show. Just send her over there with some other girls. It's close to the television studios. It's not a big deal, right? Anyway, you see what they've done is the media has, with the help of the clandestine services, has turned something very innocent, like some teenage girls that are living in a dormitory that are promised television roles, undoubtedly, down at the CBS television theater. And there they are hanging out at the pool. And there's adult supervision over there. There's Harold True, who's a longtime CIA clandestine soldier, and Phil Kaufman, who's a longtime clandestine soldier. Phil Kaufman became the cellmate for Charlie Manson at Terminal Island for a few months, just before Charlie was released on March 27th, 1967. Phil Kaufman was his cellmate. Phil Kaufman went on to be the producer for the Flying Burrito Brothers and the road manager for the Rolling Stones. And that was before the Rolling Stones leader, Brian Jones, was murder-suicided in a swimming pool. So this is the Rolling Stones that included Brian Jones. And Phil Kaufman was their manager, which would have meant he was involved with the Bill Graham free concert at Altamont Speedway, where George Lucas was very good at filming the murder by sword of Meredith Hunter, age 18. And Phil Kaufman was the road manager for the Rolling Stones. He was also the house manager, resident assistant, RA, for the girls who were kept in 3 houses with 2 swimming pools at 13158 Chandler Boulevard, which included Angela Lansbury's daughter, Deidre. So when you read things in the fake news that Angela Lansbury had to escape the Manson family and protect her daughter, just know that if you read it in the newspaper or you see it on your phone, it's not true, okay? Virtually nothing that's on your phone is true. Nothing! Even the weather you're going to have to double and triple check, okay? Just go outside and see what the weather is. Then you won't need to rely on the stupid phone. All right, so I wanted to get that clear, that Charlie Manson was a test dummy for the CIA, really, since he was 13 years old, when it was called the OSS. And, I mean, he never had a chance, okay? His mother was 15 years old when she gave birth to Charlie, and his father's name is Colonel Scott, but he's not a colonel in the Army. It's just his name is Colonel. And, and he didn't know his father. His father was an absent man. So you should know that Charlie Manson lived until he was 83 years old. He died November 19, 2017 in, I believe it was Corcoran, California State Prison. It's down by Bakersfield Way. It's not too far from Lake Isabella, which is where Leno LaBianca did his last water skiing trip before he got bayoneted in the chest 10 times. That's kind of where Charlie Manson ended up, is in that general area. It's very close proximity to where the hanging judge that made sure that Charlie Manson got convicted and made sure Charlie Manson didn't have any Sixth Amendment rights and made sure that Charlie Manson never could defend himself in court and never could provide an alibi, which I'm sure he had. Charles Older, the Flying Tiger ace, he lived out near Corcoran Prison Way in Hanford. Hanford off of, I believe it's Highway 99. Not too far from Visalia. All right, so anyway, Charlie Manson lived 83, and everybody thinks he's a cult leader, kind of like Jim Jones, who we don't talk about. Jim Jones was a preacher from Indiana, from University of Indiana, Bloomington. He was a preacher. He came to California, to San Francisco, where he met Abigail Folger's mother, who set him up with a church on Geary Boulevard, right next door to the Fillmore Auditorium, which belonged to George Sullivan, who had to be murder-suicided so that Bill Graham could use that theater, auditorium. So it's a bang-bang, and I mean literally bang-bang, because George Sullivan, I think, got shot, one time in his head, in San Francisco, not in his neighborhood, in a place that you wouldn't expect to find him at 2 o'clock in the morning. So that was the end of George Sullivan, who had no children. So that freed up the Fillmore Auditorium for Bill Graham, and next door is the Freemasonry Scottish Rites Temple, and that was given up to the People's Temple and Jim Jones, who was then sent up to Ukiah so that he could be the foreman of the grand jury in Mendocino County, a county that he had spent exactly no time living in. So he waltzes into town from Bloomington, Indiana, to San Francisco, where he gets a church facility. Then he goes and is plopped down in Ukiah, Mendocino County, where he becomes the senior person on the grand jury. He doesn't just get on the grand jury. He's the foreman. He's the number one person, which means that Jim Jones will never be arrested for drunk driving. He won't have anyone in his People's Temple Church harassed by the sheriff's department, because he's like Dr. Fauci. He is science. Okay? Jim Jones is law enforcement. He is the criminal justice system. He's the preacher of the People's Temple. And you see then that morphs eventually into Jonestown, which is a clandestine services, experimental camp with a huge pharmacy and armed guards on the perimeter. And 900 plus people were murdered, either through forced injections into their left shoulder, shot with an M16 rifle, stabbed with an M7 bayonet like Sharon Tate was, and or drank the Flavor Aid. Because guess what? The media's been telling you that it was Kool-Aid for 50 years or 40 years. But here's the deal. It was Flavor Aid. It was not Kool-Aid. It was Flavor Aid, and it was given to the children. So about 170 children drank the Flavor Aid, which is laced with cyanide, which put them to sleep in a very grotesque, violent way. But the adults were either shot with M16 rifles, bayoneted, or took an injection of cyanide into their shoulder. But we don't talk about Jim Jones. We talk about Charlie Manson, who, if you believe the bullshit poppycock story, is associated with 7 to 9 homicides, whereas Jim Jones is associated with 900 homicides. You see how dysfunctional the clandestine services in Hollywood media is? They'll have you, if you go over to Google, YouTube, and you look at the hundreds of Charlie Manson hatred sites over there, these people have never met Charlie Manson, who was a very friendly, nice person, a poet who played the guitar, and everyone loved Charlie Manson. Certainly Mike Love of the Beach Boys loved Charlie Manson. Dennis Wilson loved Charlie Manson. Brian Wilson, the founder of the Beach Boys, he loved Charlie Manson. He invited him to live with him for 45 days in Bel Air and to put 80 hours of recording time in his personal studio on Bellagio Drive, right below Art Linkletter's house. So I don't think the founder of the Beach Boys had a problem with Charlie Manson. So why do these people who were on YouTube, why do they have problems with Charlie Manson? I can tell you that Doris Day didn't have a problem with Charlie Manson. She lived in the Malibu gated colony, and he visited her there. And Terry Melcher, Doris Day's son, he didn't have a problem with Charlie Manson. He spent 18 months with him. Greg Jacobson didn't have a problem with Charlie Manson. He spent 18 months with him. The Wrecking Crew, who plays on every single album that you've heard during the 1960s and 70s, the Wrecking Crew, professional orchestra, which is like 24 professional musicians, they spent 8 hours with Charlie Manson on Santa Monica Boulevard at Gold Star Recording Studio, putting Charlie Manson's poetry to music. All day. Charlie Manson. Nobody got murdered. Nobody got bayoneted. Everybody got along. All right, so the Charlie Manson mendacity is, of course, my number one example that I use, that you can never trust the media, okay? So what I'm trying to say is, if they lied about the Charlie Manson and the Sharon Tate murders and the Leno LaBianca murders, what do you think they're doing about COVID and vax statuses and bank policies and the stock market and the bond market, which is really the dominant financial market on the planet, which is complete simulated poppycock? They're lying, okay? There is no stock market. There is no bond market. That's a meta-universe simulation. All the people that work there and make a lot of money there, you couldn't tell them. They believe it because they get a paycheck. And as long as a trader gets a paycheck, they believe in money, right? So they believe in it. But as soon as that stops, then they'll be having to commit suicide, I guess, because I would say they're pretty MK Ultra gone. You're not going to ever sit down with an institutional trader who's going to, recover from the fact that they're never going to make money in the stock market or the bond market ever again. They're not going to get over that. They're completely, mind is restructured to believe in poppycock, which is meta, which is simulated reality. It's the matrix of fraud. All right, so I just bring Charlie Manson up again because he didn't get whacked. He lived his life primarily in federal prison, and then the last part of his life, which was the majority of his life, from age 35 until age 83, he was in California state prisons or the county jails. He was in a county jail in Inyo County in the town of Independence. He was transferred to the Los Angeles County Jail for a while to go to his trials, his rigged trials where he had zero chance of ever defending himself. And then he was assigned to a variety of state prisons such as Folsom, San Quentin, Vacaville, which has a medical hospital, which is code for clandestine services, drug MK Ultra experiments. He was there for a while also. And then he was in eventually Corcoran, which is where he eventually died. He was not cremated like he requested. He was embalmed, which goes against his wishes. Now, at the other end of the spectrum, you have William Egan Colby. Now, William Egan Colby did everything that you would expect a loyal soldier to do. He went to Princeton. He went to Columbia University Law School. He volunteered for World War II. He volunteered for dangerous duty with the OSS, which was assigned to Jedburgh, to British intelligence as a paratrooper who does clandestine, behind the scene, behind enemy lines, blowing up bridges, reconnoitering, surveillance. William Colby, a brave young man, alumnus from Princeton University. And he leveraged that into Operation Gladio, with the establishment of the NATO bases throughout Western Europe, continental Europe. He ended up in Rome, and where he became acquainted with Paul Marcinkus and the Pope and the city of Vatican. He had his eldest daughter take her first Holy Communion in the St. Peter's Basilica. Undoubtedly, William Colby knew Sharon Tate's father, Paul James Tate, a colonel in the army who was stationed in Verona, which is about 100 miles north, maybe it's 150 miles north of Rome. And it might be 200 miles north. Anyway, my point is that William Colby be familiar with Milan, and Milan isn't not that far away from Verona. And in Milan, you have Roberto Calfi, who was the senior banker for the Bank of Vatican, which goes by the acronym IOR, just like all military institutions go by acronyms. Institute of Religious Studies. is sort of the definition of the Bank of Vatican, which really subcontracts all its banking with Roberto Calvi in Milan and the London bankers and the Geneva, Switzerland branch banks. Because the Catholic Church, whether you believe it or not, is basically it's a Swiss bank. That's why they have Swiss guards. As a symbol of their banking history. So, William Colby was murdered in his kitchen, in his cabin, his fishing cabin, his crabbing cabin in Maryland, at Rock Point, Maryland, on April 27th, 1996. William Colby, at age 76, was murdered by a black ops team, not different at all from the Sharon Tate, Abigail Folger, Leno LaBianca murders. That was a black ops team that operated, under cover of darkness. Although I believe the Leno LaBianca was killed when the sun was up in the morning. I think he was killed around 8:30. I think that William Colby was murdered around 8:30 to 8:45 p.m. in his kitchen when he was halfway through dinner. He had not finished his dinner. He had not finished his wine. He had a half-empty glass of wine on his kitchen table. The bowl of steamed clams and steamed corn had been moved from the table onto the kitchen counter, and it was approximately half eaten, half consumed. His wallet was on the kitchen table, which is odd. It had, I believe, $280 in cash in it, and of course in April 1996, that's a substantial amount of cash. And they do that a lot in clandestine murders. They want, like they did that with Roberto Calvi, they have lots of money on the victim, which shows you that the motive is not robbery, right? Because if you were going to murder somebody for their money, you'd take the money. Well, in the case of William Colby, he was disappeared because I'm just telling you what the police found. The police found a half-empty bowl of clams, a half-drunk glass of wine, a one-third consumed bottle of white wine, which again was on the kitchen counter and was uncorked and not put back in the refrigerator to be chilled like you would have expected. A person who was as meticulous and urbane a gentleman as William Colby, he wouldn't leave things unkept. The dishes would have been done. So we have a situation where the dishes aren't done, the wine isn't corked, the wine bottle isn't corked, the wine isn't finished, the dinner isn't finished, the wallet's on the table, it has cash in it, his credentials for CIA. Even though he's retired, he still has his CIA credentials, his driver's license, it's all there. And the radio is on, the computer is left on, and there's no William Colby. So anyway, I'm just saying, he magically reappears like Houdini 9 days later, face down on the beach in an area that the Navy SEALs had already searched for 4 days. And so obviously he wasn't there during the 9 days. It was after everyone went home and the search was called off that William Colby reappeared. Again, no cause of death given other than theories that he had a heart attack, and manic episode, I guess. That's what they called Aaron Valente's death at 33 years old. A young woman dies of manic episode. That's when you can't tell how they died. You just punt and you say, I don't know, manic episode. So what I'm trying to tell you is William Colby died at age 76, and Charlie Manson outlived him, by 7 years. Charlie Manson, the evil one. But you see, it all comes down to one thing with the clandestine service. As long as you're serving a purpose, you can live, right? So long as you're coming into the office, attending meetings, wearing your face diaper, virtue signaling the messaging that we want you to tell the peasants, that you can live. See, but William Colby wasn't coming into the office anymore. And he knows everything. He knows where the bodies are buried. He was in charge of Operation Phoenix, political terrorism in Vietnam. He was very well acquainted with Operation Gladio in Western Europe. He had to know all the particulars about the Sharon Tate murder. I guarantee you he knew everything about the Sharon Tate, Leno LaBianca assassination. I'll bet he knew everything about the Dr. Victor Ohta assassination in Soquel, Santa Cruz. I'll bet he knew everything about that too. I'll bet he knew everything about the John Kennedy CIA assassination in Dallas, Texas. I'll bet he knew everything about Watergate. Heck, he took over Watergate. He became the Central Intelligence Director of Central Intelligence after Richard Helms was disgraced and had to be moved out of his job and sent to Tehran, Iran, to set up the hostage crisis and given a pay raise in the State Department in Tehran, Iran, which is the number one place for oil. Number one. Then Venezuela. Then Iraq. That's it. In fact, you know what? The world only needs those three places. The rest of the stuff doesn't matter. Oil from Mexico, who cares? It's Iran, it's Iraq, it's Venezuela. That's it. I just solved the problem. In terms of heroin and opium, hey, you just do Afghanistan. That's fine. You don't even need Burma anymore. Just go with Afghanistan. That's it. World supply of heroin. You can have processing centers throughout the world, like Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Belize, Yucatan Peninsula, near Cancun, Mexico. Those all have processing centers for drug distribution, supply chain. All right, so I just wanted you to see the juxtaposition here. We got Charlie Manson, who's the most evil of evil, and he outlives all the people on my list. Okay, he lives to 83. William Colby, who's the most loyal soldier to the clandestine soldier, he gets whacked at 76. Dr. Victor Ohta, who I'm not really clear on what he did for the Air Force. He was a major in the United States Air Force, as well as a medical doctor, and he gets whacked, shot twice in the back of the head by a .38 pistol at age 46, along with his wife, age 43, along with his two little sons, age 11 and 12. His two little sons, they got shot once in the back of the head by a .22. All their bodies are tossed into the swimming pool of this beautiful Frank Lloyd Wright custom home in Soquel at 999 North Rodeo Gulch Road. So I don't know if there's a Masonic meaning in 999 North Rodeo Gulch Road. It's a very sparsely populated road amongst some busy neighborhoods, but it's tucked away. And there's a Franciscan retreat at the top of the hill, about a mile up the hill from where the murder was. It's a good place for murderers to assemble before and after the murder. The house was also burned down in a controlled arson blaze. And Dr. Victor Ohta owned a red Rolls Royce, which I've only ever seen in a Columbo episode featuring Robert Conrad in Chatsworth in the Miles Janus spa facilities. Okay, and let's not forget Jose Enrique Menendez. He got whacked in Beverly Hills at age 45, along with his wife, Kitty, at age 47 via professional hit using shotguns. That was on August 20th, 1989. Dr. Victor Ohta was killed, I believe, on October 19th, 1970. And then Leno LaBianca, who was killed the day after Sharon Tate, he was murdered on August 10th, 1969 at the age 44, bayoneted 10 times to his chest. He's a military policeman, former. He had 6 loaded guns in his mother's house, didn't get to those guns, so he had to have been pacified or chloroformed before he had a chance to defend himself. His second wife, Rosemary, was bayoneted 41 times. She's 39 years old. So what I'm trying to tell you is our Charlie Manson was 83 when he died. Leno LaBianca was 44. Jose Menendez was 45. Victor Ohta was 46. William Colby was 76. Art Linkletter lived to age 97. However, his children didn't. His children, Diane, died at age 20, thrown out of her apartment of the Shoreham Towers in West Hollywood onto the concrete sidewalk below on North Horn Avenue. Art Linkletter's daughter, Diane's neighbor across the street, Connie, who attended the memorial service, she died of an overdose of sleeping pills at age 31. She lived 100 feet across the street. She died 4 days later. 4 days after Art Linkletter's daughter died, Connie Monty died. And Art Linkletter's son-in-law, John Zywer, he was shot in the back of the head with a .38 pistol at age 33. 3 weeks before Sharon Tate was murdered, Art Linkletter's son-in-law was executed at a swimming pool in Hollywood. Then Art Linkletter's middle son, Robert, who played young Joker in Batman, he gets killed when a woman goes over the center line on Santa Monica Boulevard and crashes head-on into him. And she's not charged with a crime. She's not charged with manslaughter. No charges at all. You know, usually when you go over a center line and you crash into somebody, you get charged with a crime. But this woman wasn't charged with a crime, but Art Linkletter's son died at age 35. So what I'm trying to show you here is people are getting whacked. And Angela Lansbury, she just died a couple days ago at age 96. And she was in the film Manchurian Candidate, right? About the CIA mind controlling a soldier from Korea who was played by Laurence Harvey at age 32. Angela Lansbury was 36 years old in the Manchurian Candidate, which was debuted in 1962, just before John Kennedy was murdered by a Manchurian Candidate fake out, you know, Lee Oswald, the sheep dip scapegoat, because that was a professional team that murdered John Kennedy. Just like a professional team killed Leno LaBianca, Sharon Tate, Abigail Folger. It's professional. That's a professional team that burned Victor Ohta's house to the ground, that murdered his entire family and his receptionist. It's a professional team that neutralized William Colby, disappeared him for 9 days, then reappeared him dead as a doornail. It's a professional team. And Laurence Harvey, he attended the fake wedding for Roman Polanski and the fake wedding reception, because there was no wedding as far as I can tell. There's no ceremony. But there was a fake wedding reception cocktail party at the Playboy Club on a Friday afternoon, a work day, in London, in the Mayfair district of London. You know, a block away from where Cass Elliot and Keith Moon get murdered a few years later. But Laurence Harvey was there, along with Michael Caine and I'm trying to think of Agnes Moorehead, who played the mother-in-law from Bewitched. She was at the fake wedding reception for Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate. Agnes Moorehead. They had the welterweight champion of the world was there. They don't know these people. Sharon Tate doesn't know Agnes Moorehead. I mean, she might have run into her in the restroom, perhaps, you know, in Studio City. But the thing is, she doesn't know the welterweight champion. Neither does Roman Polanski. And I don't know if they even knew Michael Caine very well. But the point is, they had all these professional actors that came to the party along with the spooks from the British intelligence. And I'm telling you that Laurence Harvey starred with Angela Lansbury in 1962 in The Manchurian Candidate, which is the invisible hand laughing at us in plain view, telling us how they can mind control us into murdering people. And Laurence Harvey was 39 years old when he was at that party. He died 5 years later at age 44. So he got whacked. Walt Disney died at age 66. Did you know that Oliver Stone's real name is Silverstein? Oliver Stone's father is Louis Silverstein. Louis Silverstein, a Wall Street stockbroker. Louis Silverstein. Now, Silverstein changed his name to Stone, so Oliver Stone took on the last name of Stone. But his father's name was Silverstein. Yeah, and if you don't understand how easy it is to punk people, I talked to a guy for a long time that actually believed that Michelle Morgan purchased this love house on Cielo Drive in Benedict Canyon, right? At age 21. She was an actress, a French actress who escaped the Nazis and came to Hollywood and worked under contract with RKO, which was run, you know, with Joseph Kennedy's ownership. So Joe Kennedy, whose son became president and then got whacked, and whose other son got whacked in close proximity to this address, Cielo Drive, at the Ambassador Hotel on Wilshire Avenue, Robert Kennedy got shot in the back of the head by a Lockheed employee, Dane Eugene Caesar, right? Everyone thinks it's Sirhan Sirhan, but it wasn't. Anyway, Walt Disney died at 66. Robert Kennedy died at 42, right? Simone Renee Roussel, who's the real name of Michelle Morgan. There's no 21-year-old girl that's going to buy a vacant lot side of a cliff and then spend 4 years with bulldozers excavating and grading 2 lots, a doppelganger twin, a main house, a swimming pool, and a pool house, and then a main house, a swimming pool, and a pool house times 2, and spend 4 years, and then at the end of World War II, right when the home is finished, spend an all-day photo shoot on the Love House property, which is the upper bench, not the evil twin, the doppelganger twin. There's no 21-year-old girl who's going to spend 4 years and then at age 25 do a photo shoot, including her new fiancé driving away on their honeymoon, and then never move into the house. She goes back to France where she wins Best Actress Award for the inaugural Cannes Film Festival in 1946. Never to come back to Hollywood, never to move into the Cielo Drive Love House. So if you're naive enough to think that a 21-year-old girl could afford to purchase 2 lots, spend 4 years developing them, at the same time that Disney Studios and the Air Force is building Lookout Mountain facility, not too far away, a couple miles to the east, underground on Wonderland Avenue. If you're that stupid, I mean, that's really stupid. It's very naive. It's childlike that you believe a 21-year-old Simone Renee Roussel would build double properties that are completely controlled by the clandestine services for their entire lives to today. Until today, it's still controlled by the clandestine services to today, as well as all the other homes in the area that have been built since. Then there's no hope for you. If you really believe that a 21-year-old actress would spend 4 years developing property and never move into it, there's nothing that can be done for you. You're going to believe anything. That's the world we live in, people. Anyway, I wanted to just tell you, as long as you're contributing to the psych ops, to the meta universe, I think you can live. And but over a few months or a few years, if you're not contributing anymore to The Eye of the Devil, one of Sharon Tate's films, The Eye of the Devil, don't forget that Natalie Wood's first speaking role was with Orson Welles. That movie was called Tomorrow is Forever. Tomorrow is Forever, 1946, starring Natasha Zakharenko and Orson Welles. Of course, they didn't want to stick with the Russian spy name Zakharenko, so they changed Natalie Wood from Natasha Zakharenko. And Orson Welles, of course, with the big baritone voice, he was beloved except in New York, where he scared everyone on October 30th, 1938, when he said that space aliens were landing on a farm in New Jersey. Use your imagination, right? We're all going to be enslaved. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for listening. Just wanted to connect up the dots. In the case of the Menendez, I still can't figure out why they were in Beverly Hills. They just spent almost 2 years doing a tear-down remodel in Calabasas. It's almost done. I thought they were renting a home in Calabasas whilst the dream house was being remodeled. But I do know that there's a cover story that Eric got in trouble with some burglaries, and the deal was made for him to see a psychologist in Beverly Hills. So maybe they thought, oh, well, we'll move to Beverly Hills. But that meant pulling Eric out of Calabasas High School in his senior year. And I can't figure that out. I don't see any purpose of putting a person into Beverly Hills High School in their senior year when they don't know anyone. Eric didn't know anyone at Beverly Hills. He didn't grow up in Beverly Hills. He really grew up in Princeton, New Jersey, when his father was the chief financial officer of Hertz Rent-A-Car in New Jersey. And they were integrated into Hidden Hills, West Hills, Calabasas, Canoga Park, where the porn industry is. That's where the Eric Menendez went to high school when his father was in the pornography business in Canoga Park with Noel Bloom. Get it? Get it? Not Beverly Hills. Not Beverly Hills. So it's just like Sharon Tate lived in the love house that Michelle Morgan built. Totally false. First of all, Michelle Morgan didn't build it. And number two is Sharon Tate never moved in. Her clothes were not hanging in the closet. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.